Be my date for a day?" she asked. The lonely rancher smiled, not knowing she was his daughter's teacher. Chapter 1. A Simple Request. The afternoon sun dipped low over Willow Creek, turning the dry fields to molten gold. A steady wind swept across the open prairie, carrying the faint scent of hay, horses, and rain far in the distance. Ethan Cole sat behind the wheel of his old pickup, the kind that rattled on every bump but refused to die. His shirt was dusty, his hands rough, his blue eyes tired, but sharp, still. After years of running the ranch alone, he'd learned to live with silence. He parked beside the white fence outside Willow Creek Elementary, waiting for his daughter, Clara. She was 7, all sunshine and freckles, and the only light that still made the world worth moving through. He watched as children spilled from the schoolhouse doors, their laughter echoing through the yard. Clara ran toward him, pigtails flying, holding a folder full of drawings. Daddy, look. Miss Avery said my story about the horse was the best in class." Ethan chuckled, taking the paper she shoved into his hands. "Well, I can see why. This horse looks mighty proud. She said I get to read it in the assembly next week." "That's my girl," he said, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "Go put your things in the truck. I'll be right there." As Clara skipped away, Ethan turned and stopped short. Avery Lane, Clara's teacher, stood by the school gate, a folder tucked under her arm. She wore a soft cream dress that fluttered with the wind and a warm smile that somehow reached her eyes before her lips did. "Mr. Cole," she greeted, walking closer. "Good afternoon." "Miss Avery," he said with a nod. "Clara's been bragging about her story all week. Guess I know who to thank for that." "She's a wonderful student," Avery said. "Curious. Kind. Has her father's determination, I think." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. Compliments always made him uncomfortable. "You've done right by her. After her mama passed, school's the one place she feels steady." Avery's expression softened. "I'm glad I can help." She hesitated a moment, glancing toward the children running past. Then she looked up at him again, her voice quieter. "Actually, I was hoping to ask you something, if that's all right?" Ethan straightened. "Sure thing." She bit her lip, suddenly shy. "It's not about school. It's personal." He blinked. "Oh. The town's holding the spring charity dance next Saturday," she began, fidgeting with her folder. "Usually, the teachers volunteer to be part of the fundraising. People bid for an evening out with us. Nothing serious, just dinner, dancing, conversation. But this year, the committee decided to pair teachers with someone from the community to make it more fun." Ethan raised an eyebrow, still not following. "And you want me to?" Avery let out a nervous laugh. "Would you be my date for a day?" Ethan stared at her, unsure he'd heard right. "Pardon?" "I mean, just for the event," she said quickly, blushing. "It's not a real date. More like a partner for the evening. I'd ask someone else, but most folks are already paired, and," she trailed off, eyes dropping to the gravel at her feet, "I'd rather not go alone again." The last words came out softer than a whisper, and something in them tugged at him. Ethan shifted his hat lower. "Miss Avery, I'm not much for crowds. Or dancing." "You don't have to dance," she said, smiling nervously. "You just have to be there. Stand next to me, smile once or twice, maybe rescue me from the punch bowl if the principal starts talking about his golf swing." That made him laugh, a deep, rough sound he hadn't heard from himself in a while. "That bad, huh?" "Worse," she said, grinning. For a moment, they just stood there. A horse neighed from somewhere beyond the fence. The smell of wildflowers floated in the warm breeze. Ethan looked into her eyes, kind and unsure, and realized he didn't want to say no. "All right," he said finally. "You've got yourself a date. For one day." Avery's face lit up like the morning sun. "Really? You mean it?" "I mean it." "Thank you," she said, smiling wider now. "You've officially saved me from a very awkward evening." He tipped his hat. "Guess I'll see you there, Miss Avery." She hesitated a second, her smile softening. "You can just call me Avery." "Then you'd better call me Ethan," he replied. Her laugh followed him all the way back to the truck. That night, after Clara was tucked in and the ranch fell quiet, Ethan sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. The stars were sharp above, the kind of endless blue-black that made a man feel small. He hadn't been to a dance since his wedding. Back then, Mara's laughter had filled the same kind of night sky. The memory was still sharp, but it didn't hurt as much as it used to. He sipped the coffee, watching the faint lantern glow from town far off in the distance. "Be my date for a day," she'd said. A simple request. Harmless. But it had stirred something deep inside him, a warmth he didn't expect, a reminder that he was still alive, still capable of saying yes to something that wasn't work or duty. The week passed in its usual rhythm: sunrise, work, chores, and Clara's chatter about school. Yet every time he saw Avery in the hallway when dropping Clara off, he found himself standing a little taller. "Miss Avery says I'm reading better than last month," Clara said one night at dinner, her mouth full of mashed potatoes. She's a good teacher, Ethan said. She said her dress for the dance is blue. What's yours gonna be? He choked on his water. What makes you think I'm wearing one? Clara giggled so hard her fork clattered on the table. I mean your shirt, Daddy. He laughed too, shaking his head. Haven't decided yet. You're going with Miss Avery, aren't you? She said, smiling wide. I saw her write your name on her clipboard. He looked at her, curious. And what do you think about that? I think it's nice, Clara said simply. You smile more when you talk about her. Ethan's heart softened. Kids always saw what grown-ups tried to hide. Saturday came with clear skies and the smell of lilacs in bloom. The spring charity dance transformed the town barn into a glowing hall strung with lights and paper lanterns. Fiddles and laughter filled the air. Ethan arrived early, wearing a crisp shirt and his best vest. He hadn't worn cologne in years, but tonight he found an old bottle and dabbed some on, just in case. Then Avery appeared. She stepped through the doorway in a soft blue dress that shimmered under the lights, her hair loose for once. When she saw him, her eyes brightened. Ethan, she said, smiling. You came. Didn't want to break my promise, he replied. You look mighty fine. Color rose to her cheeks. You're kind to say that. He offered his arm, and she took it, her hand small and warm against his. The night unfolded slowly. Greetings, laughter, polite conversation. People who hadn't seen Ethan in months came up to shake his hand, surprised to see him out and smiling again. When the music slowed, Avery looked up at him. One dance. I don't dance, he said automatically. Then just walk in a circle with me, she teased. Nobody will notice. He hesitated, but when she tugged lightly on his sleeve, he gave in. They moved to the edge of the floor, swaying awkwardly at first. Then, something eased between them. The world grew quiet except for the fiddle and her steady breath against his shoulder. See, she murmured. You're a natural. Maybe I've just got a good partner. Avery smiled without lifting her head. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the weight inside him lift, like grief had loosened its grip just enough to let joy slip through. When the music ended, they stepped outside into the cool night air. Lantern light glowed across her face as they stood near the wooden fence, stars glittering above the fields. Thank you for tonight, she said softly. You made it better than I ever hoped. Ethan looked down at her, his voice low. I should be thanking you. Didn't realize how much I needed a night like this. They stood there for a long time, the silence comfortable, like the pause before a secret was spoken. Finally, Avery smiled. Good night, Ethan. He tipped his hat. Good night, Avery. As she turned to go, he caught himself wanting to call her back, wanting to say something more. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he watched her walk away, her blue dress swaying under the moonlight, and for the first time in years, the lonely rancher felt something he thought he'd forgotten. Hope. The teacher, the daughter, and the second chance. Sunday morning arrived with the smell of rain in the air and the sound of Clara's laughter echoing through the ranch house. Ethan stood by the stove, flipping pancakes while his daughter set the table in her usual crooked way. Daddy, can Miss Avery come over for breakfast someday? She asked suddenly, tilting her head. Ethan paused, spatula midair. Why Miss Avery? Because she's nice, and she makes everything fun. You smiled a lot at the dance last night. Did you dance with her? He turned to look at her. Her eyes were wide, innocent, full of curiosity. Maybe I did, he admitted, smiling softly. She's a good dancer. Clara giggled. I knew it. You like her. Now, hold on. It's okay, Daddy, she said, completely serious. Mama would want you to smile again. The words hit him right in the chest. He set the spatula down and walked over, kneeling to her height. You miss Mama, don't you? Every day, Clara said, voice small. But Miss Avery makes things feel warm. Like Mama used to. He pulled her into a hug, heart twisting with love and ache all at once. You're something else, kiddo. Later that morning, as the clouds broke and sunlight stretched across the fields, Ethan found himself driving toward town again, telling himself he just needed supplies. But he knew better. When he passed Willow Creek Elementary, he slowed down. Avery's little blue car was parked outside. He didn't plan to stop. But then he saw her sitting on the front steps, alone, with a box beside her. Ethan pulled over and stepped out. You moving classrooms or something? Avery looked up, startled, then smiled. Ethan. No, just cleaning up after the dance. I volunteered to take decorations back. He glanced at the box. You shouldn't have to do that alone. I don't mind, she said, brushing a lock of hair from her face. Gives me time to think. He studied her a moment. Thinking about what? She hesitated. Whether I should stay in Willow Creek another year. The words made his chest tighten. You're leaving. I don't know, she admitted quietly. My parents live 3 towns over. They've been asking me to move back. Sometimes this place feels too small, too quiet. And I thought I'd built something here, but lately it feels like I'm just waiting for something that isn't coming. Ethan's throat felt dry. Maybe what you're waiting for just hasn't knocked yet. Avery met his eyes, the faintest smile touching her lips. Or maybe it already did, and I was too afraid to open the door. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the wind filled the space between them. Tell you what, Ethan finally said, reaching for the box. You show me where these go, and I'll help you carry 'em. She laughed softly. You don't have to. Never said I had to. I want to. They loaded the decorations into the back of his truck and drove to the community barn. Avery talked about the kids, about small things, her class's art projects, Clara's curiosity, how she'd once found a frog in her desk drawer. Ethan listened, the sound of her voice like sunlight breaking through old clouds. When they finished unloading, Avery leaned against the fence, looking out at the distant hills. You know, she said softly, I used to dream about this kind of life. Not the teaching part, though I love it, but the quiet. The space to breathe. Ethan stood beside her. It's quiet, all right. Sometimes too quiet. She smiled faintly. That's what I thought last night. The dance was nice, but when it ended, and I went home alone again. Her words trailed off, then she looked at him, eyes shining. It made me realize how much I miss having someone to talk to at the end of the day. Ethan's hand brushed hers on the fence rail, by accident, but neither of them pulled away. I know that feeling, he said quietly. House gets mighty big when the lights go out. Too big for just one voice. She turned toward him, her heart pounding in her chest. Ethan. He met her gaze. Avery, I'm not a man who knows what to say half the time. But I do know this. Last night didn't feel pretend to me. Her breath caught. It didn't to me either. He took a small step closer. Then maybe we should stop pretending. For a heartbeat, they stood like that, wind whispering through the grass, sunlight warming the air. Then Avery smiled, soft and trembling. I'd like that. The following week brought small changes, quiet but steady. Ethan started showing up early at the school gate, not because Clara needed him to, but because Avery would be there, waving from the steps. Sometimes they'd talk for a minute, sometimes 10. He'd bring her coffee, she'd sneak him cookies the kids had baked in class. Each evening, when Clara asked, Did you see Miss Avery today? Ethan's voice softened without him meaning it to. Yes, sweetheart, he'd say. I saw her. Then came Friday. A storm rolled across the valley, dark and loud, lightning flashing over the hills. Ethan had just put the horses in the stable when he heard the phone ring. It was the school. Mr. Cole, said the secretary. Miss Avery's keeping the children in until the storm passes. Clara's fine, but she's a little scared. Thought you should know. I'm on my way, Ethan said, already grabbing his coat. When he reached the school, rain was coming down in sheets. Inside, he found Avery sitting on the floor with the kids, reading from a picture book while thunder rolled outside. Clara was tucked beside her, clutching her teacher's hand. Avery looked up when he entered, relief flickering in her eyes. You made it. Couldn't let my girl sit through a storm alone, he said. A loud crack of thunder rattled the windows, and Clara jumped, burying her face in Avery's shoulder. Avery rubbed her back gently. It's okay, sweetheart. Storms always pass. Ethan crouched beside them. You all right, pumpkin? Clara nodded, eyes wet. Miss Avery said thunder's just clouds bumping heads. That's right, Avery said, smiling softly. They make a lot of noise but never mean harm. Ethan glanced at her, warmth spreading through his chest. Even in the storm, she had a way of making the world gentler. When the rain finally stopped, the sky opened to a pale pink sunset. The children went home one by one until only Clara and Avery remained. Ethan waited by the door while Clara hugged her teacher. Miss Avery, she whispered, you should come to our ranch sometime. Daddy makes pancakes that taste like clouds. Avery laughed. That's the sweetest invitation I've ever had. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Careful, she means it. I might just take her up on it, Avery said, eyes meeting his. The next morning, she did. Clara spent the day showing Avery every inch of the ranch, the barn, the pond, the apple tree she'd planted with her mother. Ethan watched from the porch, heart swelling at the sight of his daughter's laughter mixing with Avery's. Later, as the sun dipped low, Clara fell asleep on the porch swing, curled in a blanket. Ethan and Avery sat nearby, the air humming with crickets and the scent of rain-washed earth. She loves you, he said quietly. I love her too, Avery replied, her eyes soft. She's got your heart, Ethan. Big and stubborn. He smiled faintly. I wasn't sure there was much heart left to find. There is, she said, turning to face him. You just needed someone to remind you it's still beating. The world seemed to still around them, the sky melting into orange and blue, the breeze whispering through the grass. Ethan reached for her hand, rough fingers curling gently around hers. Avery, I don't know where this goes, but I'd like to find out. You, me, and Clara. If you'll stay. Avery's eyes shimmered. I was waiting for you to ask. He smiled. So what do you say? She leaned in, her forehead brushing his. I say yes. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence said enough. Then, slowly, he kissed her. It was soft, hesitant, full of everything unspoken, hope, healing, the quiet promise of a second chance. When they pulled apart, she laughed softly. So much for just one day. He grinned. Guess one day wasn't near enough. That night, after Avery left, Ethan carried his sleeping daughter to bed. As he tucked her in, Clara mumbled through half-dreaming lips, Daddy, did Miss Avery smile today? He brushed her hair back. Yeah, sweetheart. She did. Good, she whispered. She looks pretty when she smiles. Ethan kissed her forehead. She sure does. Then he stepped outside, the moon shining over the quiet fields. The ranch no longer felt so empty. The air no longer felt so still. For the first time in years, the lonely rancher didn't look at the horizon with sorrow, but with a quiet, certain peace. He had his daughter. He had a reason to smile again. And somewhere down the road, waiting for the morning sun, was the woman who'd taught him that love could find a home twice in one lifetime.